Cardano is currently setting up for some exponential growth. And when I mean exponential, I mean it. The results of the time, they're going to be compounded and things are about to increase pretty rapidly. Now, let's go over what I mean by that, how this may happen, and some things that are crucial to this actually happening. First things first, though, if you want to earn passive ADA on the way up of this exponential growth on your ADA, you can stake it with the Jack stake pool. Now, what I'm talking about first off is the BABBAGE era. The BABBAGE era just came, we are in it right now, and this is the first step to a lot of user improvements, and also coming with this, a lot of developer improvements, of which will supply this kind of exponential growth in adoption, because more developers equals more users, or more products equals more users, and better user experiences equal more users in general. So let's dive into a thread, a little bit on Collateral, and the first user improvement that we can take note of in the BABBAGE era on Cardano. Right now, you may notice there are some infamous collaterals in Cardano, basically things that get in the way, and there is some interesting thoughts about Collateral and how it can be made better, or how it is going to be made better with the BABBAGE era. In Alonzo era, there before we were in now, the introduction of Pluto scripts was also added a new feature of transactions, which was collaterals. In the essence, a collateral is an input which is consumed when a script fails to execute a transaction, but are scripts supposed to be deterministic? Precisely. So in principle, any user in their right mind would not submit a transaction with a failing script because they would know the outcome in advance, yet an attacker of the system might find that interesting. In fact, a failed transaction consumes resources but does not reward block producers for it. No fees are collected for basic transactions, only involving public key signatures. That's only since the resources involved are negligible. Yet for Pluto scripts, it's another story. This was the reason a collateral was introduced to transactions and wallet interfaces essentially after this, because of this exact reason. It is an input for UTXO, which is consumed when a well-formed transaction with a failing script is submitted through the system. It acts as a mechanism to prevent bad actors to waste resources of the network at no cost. Any transaction that executes a script is required to have a collateral, but is only consumed if the result of the script execution turns out wrong, which doesn't really happen, and the amount of collateral depends on the cost of the script and some protocol parameters, plus some extra rules. In particular, the collateral itself cannot be an input locked by a script. More so, it must not contain any native asset and just be pure ADA in the UTXO. Of course, it must also be an existing input that can be rightfully spent by the transaction. In practice, this means that wallets must manage this collateral. Wallets must make sure to keep a large enough ADA only UTXO available for collateral, and this can be a little tricky and also a bit odd from a user experience perspective. Most ADA holders that have interacted with dApps have probably went through the steps of setting a collateral. Going to your wallet right now, if you open it up and go to these settings, you will see we have a collateral option. I have it on my wallet set, but I had to set this initially before using any dApps on Cardano. Prior to making any smart contract transactions. Some dApps didn't even account for this. They don't tell you need collateral. The transaction just fails. The error messaging isn't that great. And also having to set it is not very intuitive at all. When you open a wallet, it doesn't tell you to set it. It doesn't tell you to manage your collateral. It doesn't tell you what collateral is. And it's just a confusing concept in general. Most data holders probably went through this and got confused at first. This is a relatively transparent way of doing things for wallet providers to inform users about collaterals, by basically failing the transaction to have a smart contracts work without collaterals, because it won't. But overall, it's an unsatisfactory user and developer experience too for both ADA holders and wallet providers alike. While the management of collaterals doesn't require users to explicitly set one, it's cumbersome and confusing to manage over time behind the scene for wallets. So with the BABBAGE era, a new feature is introduced called collateral return. This allows for wallets to not only define a collateral input to consume on failure, but also an output to send some change to in case it happens. And this makes everyone's life a lot easier. If you remember the constraints about collateral, in particular that it needs to be ADA only, that's no longer going to be a thing. Now what matters is the remainder between the collateral input and the return is an ADA value of a minimum quantity depending on the script cost and protocol parameters. Said differently, it makes the management of collaterals way easier for wallets that decide to make use of it, and they no longer need to keep particular ADA-only UTXOs around, but can simply use any sufficiently large input as collateral and dump what is ever left as change in the output. It's interesting to note that collaterals were never meant to be a user-facing feature in the first place. However, they very much are in every single big wallet we have now on Cardano today. This was supposed to happen behind the scenes only, never be worried by the user, because in principle, users or by extension wallets do not normally submit failing transactions. Yet this somehow made its way through UIs in such a way that Cardano users have grown accustomed to it if you pin on Cardano and use any dApp, up to the point where new wallets would even have to adopt the same strategy just to not confuse people. User experience is a funny thing, but moving forward with collateral return available in the protocol, we can hope that wallet providers will gradually update and adopt this new approach and put collaterals back in the shadow and not bother the users about it anymore. The less things for the users to worry about, the more or less obstacles for them to overcome, the more users are going to come to the ecosystem with less hassle, and so on and so forth. The snowball effect and the exponential curve starts to grow a little bit. However, this adoption of collateral return is up to whoever is going to construct the transactions, essentially the wallet providers, and most of the dApps are going to have to adopt this so wallets can get rid of the UX pain points. So raise your concerns to project if you want this, but also on the exponential curve, this magic super compounding effect, we have more important things, or some really important things at least, which is developer tooling. I've been saying this for quite a while now. I mentioned it in yesterday's video too. If we're going to see this exponential curve for Cardano's growth in the BABBAGE era, we need to see people have ways to code and do it easily on Cardano. Basically an on-ramp that is simple, straightforward, and allows people to build dApps without needing to know every intricacy of Plutus. Basically being able to utilize Cardano's blockchain security and privacy, or security and scalability and whatever else, utilize layer 1 without having to know how to code in Plutus, and being able to form transactions and submit them using tools that are made like Demeter Run and Mesh Playground, or Martify by Mesh, or Mesh by Martify, just building applications on Cardano with ease. Tools like this are the things that are going to allow this exponential curve over here to happen. Because when we have more developers, we're going to have more products, and more products have more chances of bringing in more users, and so on and so forth. Also things like Lucid, allowing it to create Cardano transactions and off-chain code for Plutus contracts in JavaScript, Demo, and Node.js. Things like this are the things that are really important, as well as overall better user experiences that more developers coming to the ecosystem will be able to create over time. As the competition grows and the amount of people developing on Cardano grows, upping the overall chances of something solid and with a good user experience coming to the space. Anyways, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. The thread I mentioned will be linked down in the description. I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. It's been your friend Jack. Peace out.